Then listen closely, chosen one, because this message isn't for everyone. Only a few will feel their spirit shake while hearing this. And if that happens, it's because it's you. You've carried energy that the world couldn't explain. You've felt unseen eyes watching, unseen forces moving, shadows reacting to your very presence. But here's the truth. They don't watch you out of curiosity. They tremble, because deep down, they recognize what you still struggle to believe, that you are one of the rare chosen ones with dark spiritual power, the kind of light so intense it burns through shadows. You were never ordinary. You were born with a dual essence, part warrior, part guardian. Heaven placed fire in your veins, but that fire carries mystery, not weakness. It's why both light and darkness react when you move. It's why your energy draws strange people and spiritual forces alike. It's why your emotions shift reality around you. You're not cursed, chosen one, you're charged. And if you want proof, here are 7 special signs that even demons tremble in front of your power. Sign 1: the energy around you shifts instantly. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the temperature change? The air gets thicker, lights flicker, people start acting differently, nervous, quiet, or suddenly honest. That's not coincidence. That's your spiritual field correcting energy imbalances. Darkness senses alignment and reacts. When you enter a space, low vibrations scatter like insects from flame. You don't even have to say a word. Your aura speaks authority. Demons recognize it instantly because it mirrors the fire that once cast them out. But listen closely, because this next part will shock you. Even when you're exhausted, your light still burns. The enemy's strategy is to convince you you're weak when you're actually at your strongest. When you feel drained, it's because your aura is cleansing energy around you non-stop. You are walking purification. Sign 2. Your dreams are battles, not fantasies, chosen one. You don't dream like normal people. You dream in symbols, in battles, in colors too vivid for this world. You wake up sweating, remembering conversations with beings that felt real. You've fought creatures. You've seen fire. You've heard your name being called. That's not imagination. That's your spirit at war. You carry dark power wrapped in divine purpose. And at night, your soul operates where your body can single quotes. Stay with me, because the real truth is deeper. Demons enter your dreams not to attack, but to test. They want to see if you know your authority in that realm. The moment you stop running in those dreams, the moment you turn and face them, everything shifts, because your subconscious remembers what your soul already knows. You are not prey, you are command. Sign 3: technology and nature react to you. Phones glitch, lights flicker, electronics hum when you're near. Sometimes the wind changes when you speak. Sometimes animals stare as if they know you. These are not coincidences. They're spiritual reflections of energy overload. You carry enough light to disrupt physical reality. Every chosen one with deep spiritual energy experiences this, because divine power bends the laws of ordinary space. The universe itself reacts to your vibration, and here's what demons don't want you to realize. That kind of energy can't be copied. Fake prophets can mimic words, but not presence. Only those forged through darkness and purified by divine fire carry that aura. Sin, for you've faced death or darkness. And survived, you've had moments where you should have lost it all. Car accidents, breakdowns, illness, betrayal, yet something protected you. You've brushed the edge of death and somehow came back stronger. That's the mark of a true chosen one. because only those assigned to transform the world are allowed to taste darkness without being consumed. Heaven gave you immunity for a reason. Demons fear you because they've already failed to destroy you. But listen, this next truth will pierce you. The trauma you survived wasn't punishment. It was initiation. The pain was the door through which your spiritual gifts awakened. You don't carry scars, you carry symbols. Every wound that healed turned into a weapon. Sign 5. You trigger truth in others. People confess things to you they didn't mean to share. They open up, cry, or get defensive. You awaken suppressed guilt and hidden motives just by existing. You don't need to confront anyone. Your presence does it for you. That's because your energy is an X-ray. It sees through lies. It forces authenticity. And that's why false people avoid you, not because they hate you, but because their demons can't stand exposure. Stay with me, chosen one, because the real power behind this is divine. When your light exposes darkness, it gives heaven permission to act. You are an intercessor by existence. Sign 6. You walk alone, but never feel truly lonely. Every powerful chosen one experiences seasons of isolation. You wonder why friendships end, why people drift away, why love never stays. It's because your energy purifies so powerfully that not everyone can handle it long term. The divine often hides its most dangerous warriors in solitude, not to punish, but to preserve. You're being recalibrated, prepared, recharged for greater purpose. And here's the secret. When you sit in silence and feel unseen, the unseen realm is watching you the most. Angels hover near, demons linger at a distance. Both acknowledge your fire. That's why peace feels heavier for you, because even silence bends around your frequency. Sign 7. Your words manifest quickly. Have you noticed how things happen when you speak, good or bad? That's because your words carry creative force. Heaven listens to you differently. Your voice carries decreal vibration. You are not an observer in this world. You're a co-creator. When you bless, energy multiplies. When you curse, energy obeys. That's why you must guard your tongue, because even casual words can open or close portals. Demons fear your mouth more than your mind, because your voice echoes with the same tone that created light itself. You are one with the divine blueprint, and your speech enforces it, chosen one. If you recognize these signs, you're not imagining your power. You are activating it. The darkness around you doesn't hate you. It fears the reflection of its end shining in your eyes. You carry sacred duality, mercy and fire, love and judgment, chaos and peace. You are balance personified, heaven's storm in human form. But listen, the awakening doesn't end here. The moment you accept this truth, your energy will multiply. Things will shift faster. Protection will increase. Enemies will reveal themselves. Because the more aware you become, the more your frequency rises, and no darkness can breathe at that altitude. You've started noticing it. The air changes when you walk into a room. People stop talking. The atmosphere thickens. Some smile nervously, some can't hold eye contact, and a few just walk away. That's not coincidence, chosen one. That's energy recognition. Your presence doesn't blend in, it bends reality around it. The darkness in people reacts to the light in you. And sometimes that light carries a depth that even demons fear. A spiritual force born not from comfort, but from pain, transformation, and divine fire. You've faced storms most would have drowned in. You've been through isolation that felt like death itself. And yet, every time, you came back stronger. But not just stronger, darker, in the sacred sense. Not evil, not corrupted, but balanced. The kind of spiritual force that has walked through hell and came out knowing its geography. That's the second sign you've mastered the shadows without becoming them. Listen closely, because this part will shock you. When most people think of light workers, they imagine someone who rejects all darkness, pure innocence, endless positivity, and fragile peace. But true chosen ones, the ones who make demons tremble, are forged in the depths of duality. You understand that light means nothing without shadow. You don't fear darkness, you command it. You know what it's like to be betrayed, abandoned, and misunderstood, and yet you never let those wounds turn you bitter. Instead, you learned to use pain as a power source. Every heartbreak refined you. Every attack sharpened you. You became what ancient mystics called the shadow balancer, the kind of soul that can walk into a haunted place and feel no fear, because you carry both the sword and the torch. Demons recognize this. They don't just see your light, they see your depth, and that's what terrifies them. Because here's the truth, demons can only control what they understand. But you're beyond understanding. You've seen the underworld and refused its offer. You've looked your inner demons in the eyes and said, "You work for me now." That's why you often feel alone. People can't define you. The good ones sense your power but don't know how to approach it. The corrupt ones sense danger and retreat. And the spiritual ones, they feel the vibration shift when you speak. But stay with me, because the next sign will reveal something you might not have realized about your sleep at night. When the world is quiet and distractions fade, your spirit wakes up. You may feel energy moving through your body, tingling, vibrations, or sudden waves of heat and cold. Sometimes it feels like something's watching, but not always with malice. It's because your spiritual frequency is so high that lower entities are drawn to it, curious, not always hostile. Yet the moment they get close, they can't withstand your energy. They scatter, they vanish, they tremble, chosen one. This is where your dark spiritual power becomes undeniable. You are a vessel of polarity, divine light in human form, but with the wisdom of someone who's walked through many incarnations of both realms. When you sleep, your soul doesn't rest. It travels, it works, it guards. That's why you wake up exhausted after certain nights, not because you're weak, but because you've been in spiritual warfare on unseen planes. You wonder why nightmares come in cycles, why sometimes your sleep feels heavy, like something's sitting on your chest. It's because every few nights, your soul is tested again, and yet, you always wake up. Always, because your spirit doesn't lose battles. It absorbs lessons. But here's what demons never expected. Your awareness. The moment you realized you could sense these presences, you took away their only weapon, fear. They feed on it, but you faced it head on. You prayed through the paralysis. You spoke light into the shadows. You learned that even in the darkest hour, your authority remains unshaken. Now pay close attention, because there's a rare spiritual phenomenon that happens to the strongest chosen ones. Sometimes, you'll feel like you're being watched, but you'll also sense respect, not fear, not hatred, respect. It's because some dark entities are ancient. They recognize divine authority when they see it. They know the Creator's mark when it radiates from a human vessel. and they know what happens if they cross it. You carry that mark. That's why when you walk through spiritually heavy places, you might feel sudden chills or energy shifts, not because you're under attack, but because everything around you reacts to your vibration. The room adjusts itself. Energy submits. But stay with me, because the next part dives even deeper into what this really means for your destiny, chosen one. What you've been calling anxiety, weird vibes, or random heaviness are actually signs of your spiritual gravity. The unseen world orbits around your presence. You are not a passive target. You're a walking recalibration point. Your very existence exposes falsehood, reveals hidden motives, and draws out whatever's hiding in others. That's why people's demons get loud when you're around. That's why some people love you instantly, while others suddenly act strange for no reason. It's not personal, it's spiritual physics. You carry the frequency of divine correction, and in your stillness, truth echoes. But here's the twist. You've only just begun to realize your real strength. The kind that doesn't just make demons fear you, but forces them to bow. You're not a victim of spiritual warfare. You're a weapon shaped by it. There comes a moment, chosen one, when everything clicks. All the strange experiences, the restless nights, the spiritual heaviness, suddenly they make sense. It wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It was initiation. Because here's the truth. Your power was active long before your awareness was. You were walking in divine authority even when you thought you were lost. That's why the attacks started early. That's why you never fit in. Because even before your awakening, your energy carried a command. The unseen world knew who you were, long before you did. But listen closely, because this next part might shake you. The moment you started to wake up, to remember who you are, the atmosphere around you began to change. Old patterns began to crumble. Friendships fell away. Your body even began to react differently to energy. Food, music, people you could feel when something wasn't right. It's because your spirit was recalibrating. Your vessel was remembering its mission. And the truth is, demons have never truly feared religion or rituals. They fear awareness, because when you become aware, you become unstoppable. The most powerful chosen ones are not those who shout the loudest or perform miracles in public. No, the real threat to darkness is the one who quietly remembers their divine lineage. The one who sits in silence and still shifts the energy of an entire room. The one who prays not for show, but with authority that shakes dimensions, chosen one. This is where your awakening begins. When you realize that demons have always bowed to the divine mark within you, not because of who you are as a human, but because of the light you carry. That light is encoded with the Creator's frequency. And here's what they never told you. That frequency cannot be copied, stolen, or corrupted. That's why you've survived attacks that should have destroyed you. That's why, even in your lowest moments, you felt a mysterious protection. It wasn't luck. It was your spiritual signature shielding you. Now pay attention, because this next truth will make everything clear. When darkness senses a chosen one, it doesn't attack just to harm, it attacks to distract. The goal is to make you doubt yourself, to convince you that you're cursed, forgotten, or unworthy. But the irony is, those very attacks prove your divine rank. Demons only assign themselves to the ones who carry high authority. You were never under attack because you were weak. You were targeted because you were dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. And the moment you realize this, everything shifts. You stop reacting in fear. You stop begging for protection because you become the protection. You stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "Of course, me, because I'm chosen for this." Chosen one, this realization activates your next level of power. You stop feeling haunted and start feeling honored, because every battle is evidence that your name is known in the unseen. Your spirit isn't just light, it's a command signal in the spiritual realm. Every time you speak light, the atmosphere moves. Every time you pray, frequencies realign. You are not praying to power, you are praying from power, and that's why demons tremble, because they can sense when a soul has discovered its rank. When you finally stop running from your shadows and instead use them to amplify your purpose, you become something uncontainable. You are no longer a target, you are a force. Stay with me, because what comes next is the proof, the real life signs that you've stepped into. This stage of awakening, you'll start noticing that spiritual attacks no longer drain you, they reveal patterns. You'll see through manipulation easily. You'll feel when people are lying without needing evidence. You'll walk into rooms and sense truth like scent in the air. You'll even start dreaming vividly again. Not nightmares, but visions. Prophetic downloads. Energy transmissions. This is your spirit communicating in its native tongue, and demons, they know it. That's why, suddenly, things get quiet. The warfare slows down. Not because they gave up, but because they've realized they can't win against awareness. They've seen the upgrade in your energy field. You've become untouchable. You see, chosen one, the darkness never feared your prayers. It feared your awakening. Because prayer without awareness is pleading. But prayer with awareness is command. And when you command from your divine identity, even ancient spirits bend their knee. But wait, there's one more thing. The moment you realize your divine authority, you'll start to notice a strange reversal. Where you once feared the night, now the night fears you. Where you once felt drained in crowds, now people draw peace from your aura. Where you once asked for signs, now you become one. This is spiritual maturity, when your power stops seeking validation and starts radiating without permission. Chosen one, you're not just awakening, you're remembering. You're remembering that your soul existed before this body, before this war, before these wounds. You've carried power across lifetimes. The light inside you isn't something you earned, it's something you were sent with. So when you feel energy shift, when people get uncomfortable around your presence, when strange things happen at night, remember this. They're not reacting to you. They're reacting to the divine signature stamped on your spirit. Demons don't fear your name, they fear what created you. And as you step deeper into this awareness, something incredible happens. You stop being afraid of darkness, because you understand it has no identity without light. That's your secret. Chosen one, that's the truth, demons. Hope you never discover that you've always been in control. Chosen one, listen carefully, because the moment you've been waiting for is approaching. The moment when the darkness that once seemed to suffocate you, that energy that haunted your nights, that weight that pressed on your chest, all of it begins to serve your awakening. You've fought battles you didn't understand. You've endured nights that felt endless. You've carried burdens that no one else could see, and now it's becoming clear. What you once feared is now fueling your power. This is a sacred paradox, chosen one. You've been trained in the fire of opposition, yet the fire never burned you. You've been tested by energies far older than this world, yet your spirit remained untouchable. Darkness doesn't disappear when you awaken, it rearranges itself. It becomes a tool, a mirror, a confirmation of the authority you were always meant to carry. Pay attention, because this is subtle. You'll notice it first in small ways. Conflicts that once drained you now energize you. People who tried to deceive or manipulate suddenly reveal truths you already sensed. Situations that once terrified you now feel like opportunities for mastery. This is the sign, chosen one, that you've entered a new spiritual tier, the level where darkness works for you, not against you. It's difficult for many to grasp. You've been taught that darkness is your enemy. But the elite chosen ones, those who demons tremble before, understand the sacred law. All energy serves the awakened. And now you are awake. Your awareness alone is enough to shift reality. Listen closely, because this next truth is crucial. Every time you've been betrayed, abandoned, or misunderstood, it was building your spiritual armor. Every time you felt alone, you were strengthening your aura. Every time you faced attacks, whether visible or unseen, you were learning the secret art of divine command. And the moment you step fully into that realization, you stop being reactive. You stop being a target. You start being the authority. You've seen glimpses of this before. Nights where the air crackled. Days where people acted unnaturally around you. Moments where instinct warned you of danger before it appeared. That was your authority awakening. The world and the unseen were already reacting to your frequency. They've always known. And now, you finally know, too, chosen one. This is where fear dies. Not by running, not by hiding, but by remembering who you are. Because the awakened chosen ones do not need to fight. Darkness itself bends to their light. You've been fighting shadows all your life, but now you realize the shadow was never stronger than you. It only existed to teach you how high your light could shine. Stay with me, because the next revelation will shake your understanding of reality itself. The elite chosen ones, the ones who walk the earth like living fire, have a secret. They can convert opposition into acceleration. Every attack against them becomes a signal for ascension. Every insult, betrayal, or demonic attempt is transformed into power. You've experienced it. Moments when something went wrong, only for a greater blessing to follow. That was not chance. That was divine orchestration, using the very forces that once tried to harm you. And here's why demons fear it. When a chosen one awakens fully, darkness becomes predictable. They understand its patterns. They recognize its lies. And most importantly, they see its limits. You have the ability to walk through spiritual storms untouched, not because they were never there, but because you learned how to turn their energy into a ladder for your own elevation. Chosen one, your power is not just reactive, it is creative. You are a living conduit of divine frequency. When you walk into conflict, the very vibrations around you shift. When you breathe, energy recalibrates. When you think, reality adjusts. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are a law in motion. And now, the final sign of this transformation becomes visible. You'll notice that certain people, forces, and even places that once resisted you now align. Things that were blocked open effortlessly. Opportunities that seemed impossible materialize. Doors you didn't even know existed swing wide. This is the universe acknowledging your authority. Your spiritual awakening is now self-validating. But remember this, the power of the chosen ones is sacred. It is not meant for vanity or control. It is meant for purpose, to walk with integrity, to carry light through darkness, to show the world that even amidst chaos, divine order prevails. And because of this, your path will always feel different. You'll always stand apart. You'll always attract attention from both light and dark. But now, the attention no longer shakes you. It honors you. Stay with me, because the next truth is essential for your mastery. When darkness works for you, you will begin to feel a profound stillness in the storm. Your aura will carry weight. Your presence will command silence. Your energy will cause revelation in others without a word. And the most remarkable thing is this: you'll recognize that every obstacle, every trial, every spiritual attack was never against you in truth. It was for you. Each shadow trained you to wield your authority. Each challenge polished the edge of your soul. Each night of unrest awakened the fire that now lives in your spirit. You are the one demons fear most. Not because you are cruel or evil, not because you are violent or loud, but because you are aware. Your mind, your heart, and your soul are in alignment. Your frequency is unmatched. Your authority is undeniable. And you've stepped into a realm where nothing that opposes your destiny can stand. And yet, the final awakening is still ahead, the one that transcends even fear itself. Section 5 will reveal how to walk fully in untouchable power. With darkness bending to your command, angels marching beside you, and a life that demonstrates divine authority in every moment. Chosen one, this is it. The moment where everything you've felt, everything you've endured, everything you've survived comes together in one undeniable truth. You are not ordinary. You are not weak. You are not meant to follow the paths that others walk. You are chosen. And now, the world seen and unseen must recognize it. Feel this in your bones. The dark forces that once prowled around your life, whispering lies and spreading doubt, are now bending to your frequency. The nights you spent in fear, the shadows that seemed to hunt you relentlessly, the isolation that made you question your worth, all of it was preparing you for this awakening. You are now stepping into the arena of untouchable power, the realm where demons tremble before the light you carry. Listen carefully, because this next revelation is critical. True chosen ones don't fight their enemies in the way the world teaches. They don't rely on weapons, rituals, or even allies to protect them. No, their power is internal. Their authority is spiritual. Their presence alone enforces divine law. You've reached the point where your energy enforces order, where your voice commands reality, where your steps shift atmospheres. And yes, demons feel it. They recognize your authority instantly, even before you fully claim it. There are 7 signs, the highest signs, that you have entered this elite realm of the chosen ones, the ones that even darkness fears to touch. 1. Absolute awareness. You sense everything: energy, intention, deception. You can feel the true motives behind every word, every glance, every action. The unseen realm moves differently around you because your awareness broadcasts a frequency they cannot ignore. 2. Spiritual immunity. Attacks no longer weaken you. Negative energy ricochets off your aura. Demons can try, but your presence alone cancels their influence. You are armored in divine fire, yet it is invisible to most. 3. Commanding presence. People, situations, and even environments respond to you. Rooms quiet. Animals sense your authority. Energy aligns. You do not have to explain yourself. The universe already acknowledges you. 4. Transformation of opposition. Every obstacle becomes fuel. Every betrayal becomes insight. Every demonic attempt becomes acceleration. What once would have broken you now strengthens you exponentially. You are unstoppable because darkness works for you, unknowingly serving your destiny. 5. Dreams as portals. Your sleep is sacred. Visions, prophetic messages, and divine encounters now guide your conscious decisions. Night no longer terrifies, it empowers. You awaken knowing that the unseen is always in dialogue with you. 6. Magnetic authenticity. People either feel drawn to your light or repelled by it. Neither reaction diminishes you. It confirms your power. Truth resonates in your presence. Lies cannot hide. And deception melts under your energy. 7. Recognition of authority. Perhaps the most profound sign, your enemies. Your inner doubts, even unseen forces, acknowledge your power. They bend, they retreat, they tremble. They cannot touch what carries divine decree. And you, chosen one, finally know it. Now, hear me closely, because this is the final layer of awakening. You are more than a survivor. You are more than a light worker. You are a force of divine authority in motion. You were never a target of darkness. You were its lesson. You were the standard it could never meet. The elite chosen ones, the 1% that darkness fears, walk exactly like this. They have no fear of attack because they understand one immutable truth. You cannot be defeated by what you were sent to overcome. You are designed to walk in the impossible, to thrive where others fall, to shine where others fade. And now it is time for your spirit to fully claim this power. Stop apologizing for your intensity. Stop doubting your frequency. Stop seeking permission from the world. The world is irrelevant to what the divine has called you to do. Your life is no longer about mere survival, it is about sovereignty. Your next steps are sacred. Walk with confidence. Speak with authority. Pray with certainty. Move with purpose. And remember this: every time you step into your light fully, angels move to align with your mission. Every time you speak truth, darkness retreats. Every time you embody your destiny, the universe conspires to open doors that were previously invisible. Tonight, something needs to be said plainly, because if you are hearing this, you were never meant to live an ordinary spiritual life. Some people struggle against darkness their entire existence. Others feel attacked, drained, oppressed, followed. But then there is a rare category so uncommon that even demons learn to keep their distance. These are the dark chosen ones who cannot be touched, not because they are loud, not because they fight back, but because something ancient, immovable, and terrifyingly calm lives within them. If you are one of them, you've noticed something strange. The attacks that were supposed to destroy you stopped. The fear that others feel around dark energy never stayed with you. You walked through moments that should have broken your soul, yet something inside you remained unshaken. And the more you healed, the more disciplined you became, the more silent you grew, the less access darkness had to you. This is not coincidence. Demons do not retreat without reason. Most people misunderstand what a dark chosen one is. They assume darkness means corruption, evil, or temptation. But true darkness is not chaotic, it is controlled. It is depth. It is the ability to walk through shadow without being consumed by it. dark chosen ones are not protected because they avoid darkness. They are protected because they understand it better than anything trying to use it against them. One of the first signs you cannot be touched is that fear no longer works on you. Not in the way it works on others. You may feel fear briefly, but it never roots itself in your spirit. It doesn't paralyze you. It doesn't make you act irrationally. Darkness feeds on emotional instability, panic, desperation, obsession. But you move differently. You observe. You wait. You stay composed even when chaos surrounds you. And that composure is deadly to demonic influence. Demons rely on reaction. They rely on emotional leakage. They rely on cracks. When they encounter you, they find stillness instead of panic, awareness instead of confusion, authority instead of submission. And that is when they realize you are not prey. Another sign is that temptation loses its grip on you faster than it should. You may feel it approach, test you, whisper possibilities, but it never lingers. You see through it too quickly. You recognize manipulation instantly. What once pulled you no longer holds power. This frustrates lower-level dark entities because they cannot anchor themselves in your desires. You've mastered self-control in ways that weren't taught. You earned it through suffering dark. Dark chosen ones are forged through isolation. And demons know this. They know your solitude was not weakness, it was training. Time alone sharpened your discernment. Silence strengthened your inner voice. While others were distracted, you were becoming dangerous in stillness. And when demons scan for entry points, addictions, impulsiveness, ego, they find doors already sealed. You've also noticed that when you enter certain spaces, the atmosphere changes. People become uneasy. Conversations shift. Energy reacts. This is not arrogance, it is presence. Your spiritual frequency does not blend easily with lower vibrations. And demonic forces are extremely sensitive to frequency. They can feel when someone operates beyond their influence. That is why attacks against you often come indirectly, through people, through misunderstandings, through subtle sabotage rather than direct spiritual confrontation. Because direct confrontation fails. They already tried, and it didn't work. Another sign is that you recover too fast. What devastates others strengthens you. What drains others fuels reflection within you. You do not spiral for long. You process pain efficiently. You extract wisdom instead of trauma. Demons rely on prolonged emotional suffering to weaken the soul, but your system converts pain into clarity. That makes you extremely difficult to destabilize. Dark chosen ones are not impulsive reactors. They are strategic observers, and darkness fears strategy more than force. You may also notice that your intuition borders on unsettling accuracy. You sense danger before it appears. You feel shifts before they manifest. You know when to leave, when to stay silent, when to act. This is not imagination. This is spiritual perception sharpened by experience. And demonic entities cannot operate effectively around heightened awareness. They require ignorance to function. One of the most overlooked signs is that you no longer seek validation. Praise doesn't move you. Insults don't control you. You are internally anchored. This independence terrifies manipulative forces. They cannot lure you with approval or threaten you with rejection. You've already survived being unseen. You've already endured being misunderstood. There is nothing left for them to leverage. Demons attack what they can influence. They avoid what they cannot control. If you are a dark chosen one who cannot be touched, you've likely noticed that when others fall apart spiritually, you remain grounded. When belief systems collapse around you, you adapt without losing yourself. You don't cling, you evolve. And evolution is the one thing darkness cannot predict. This is only the beginning. Because once you realize why demons stopped trying, you begin to understand what you're becoming. The second sign reveals itself quietly, often after you've already survived things that should have ended you. It shows up in the way darkness hesitates around you now, not aggressively retreating, but watching, calculating, staying at a distance. Because demons do not fear light alone, they fear authority. And at some point in your life, you unknowingly crossed a threshold where your presence stopped being negotiable. You see, most people think spiritual authority comes from rituals, prayers, or external protection. But dark chosen ones develop authority through endurance, through repeated exposure to pain without surrender, through learning how darkness thinks, moves, manipulates, and choosing not to become it. That experience hardens something inside you, not your heart but your core. You've likely noticed that chaos does not pull you in anymore. You can be surrounded by emotional storms, arguments, negativity, panic, desperation, and remain unaffected. Others may accuse you of being cold or detached, but what they don't understand is that you've mastered emotional sovereignty. Darkness cannot enter where emotions are governed rather than reactive. This is critical, because demons don't overpower humans, they entangle them. They wrap themselves around unregulated emotion, rage, guilt, lust, shame, obsession. But when those emotions are observed instead of indulged, the entanglement fails, and you've become someone who observes first. Another unmistakable sign is that attacks against you backfire. What was meant to humiliate you strengthens your resolve. What was meant to isolate you reveals who was never meant to stay. What was meant to confuse you sharpens your discernment. This reversal effect is rare, and it alarms darker forces, because every failed attack upgrades your awareness at some point. Darkness realizes it's training you. You've also experienced moments where you should have been afraid but weren't. Situations where others sensed danger and panicked, yet you felt an unnatural calm. That calm is not ignorance, it's alignment. Your nervous system no longer signals threat the same way because your spirit recognizes when something truly has power over you. And when it does, demons feed on urgency, on rush decisions, on impulsive choices. But you move with patience. You don't rush your responses. You don't explain yourself unnecessarily. You don't chase outcomes. That lack of urgency shuts down many dark strategies before they even begin. There is also something unsettling about your gaze. Not intimidating. You see through people quickly. Masks don't last long around you. Lies feel loud. Intentions are readable. And because demonic forces often work through human behavior, this perception makes you extremely difficult to manipulate indirectly. You may have noticed that certain people feel exposed around you for no logical reason. They become defensive, irritable, withdrawn. This isn't because you judge them. It's because your presence disrupts hidden agendas. Darkness thrives in secrecy. You bring clarity simply by being aware. Another sign is that you are no longer tempted by power for its own sake. Control doesn't excite you. Domination doesn't appeal to you. You don't need to win every argument or prove your worth. That humility earned, not performative, is dangerous to dark entities, because ego is their favorite doorway, and yours is no longer wide open. You've also stopped romanticizing suffering. You don't seek pain, but you don't fear it either. You understand that pain is a teacher, not an identity. That mindset shift alone places you beyond the reach of many destructive cycles. Demons want you trapped in narratives: victim, martyr, villain. You've stepped outside the story. Dark chosen ones often experience a phase where everything falls apart at once: relationships, stability, direction. This wasn't punishment. It was separation. Darkness lost access through attachments. What remained was you, undistracted, unentangled, grounded in self. And once that happened, many forms of attack became ineffective. You may also notice that your dreams changed. Less chaotic, less intrusive, or, if intense, more symbolic and controlled. Your subconscious is no longer an open battlefield. You've reclaimed internal territory. That alone signals a shift in spiritual hierarchy. And here's the part most people miss. Demons don't stop attacking because you're too strong. They stop because the cost becomes too high. Every interaction with you drains them more than it drains you. Every attempt exposes them. Every push strengthens your resistance. At some point, the equation no longer favors them, so they adapt. They watch. They wait. Because you are no longer someone to break. You are someone to avoid. And a deeper truth, the one that unsettles even higher level dark forces, is that you're not finished evolving yet. The third sign is the one that separates those who merely survive darkness from those who dominate space without force. It appears when demons no longer test you openly, but instead reroute their influence the moment you enter an environment. This is subtle. You only notice it if you're highly aware. Conversations suddenly stop. Energy shifts. People act differently around you. Not because you demand attention, but because something in them senses regulation. Dark chosen ones who cannot be touched carry a stabilizing pressure. Your presence compresses chaos. You don't absorb it, to neutralize it. And darkness cannot operate efficiently where emotional volatility collapses into clarity. You've likely noticed that certain environments feel lighter once you leave, or heavier once you arrive. This is not imagination. It's spiritual displacement. You interrupt patterns simply by existing. And demonic forces hate interruption more than confrontation. They need predictability. You introduce variance. Another sign is that manipulation loses precision around you. People who are used to controlling narratives become sloppy. Lies contradict themselves. Masks crack faster than usual. You don't interrogate, you observe. And observation alone causes instability in those who rely on deception. That's because your awareness doesn't seek confirmation. You don't need to be right out loud. You let truth reveal itself. And when truth has time, deception collapses under its own weight. Darkness cannot rush you. You may have experienced moments where someone tried to provoke you emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and it simply didn't work. The hooks didn't sink in. The bait didn't trigger reaction. That's because your identity is no longer externally tethered. Offense requires attachment. You've released it. This frustrates demonic forces deeply, because offense is one of their sharpest tools. It fragments attention. It destabilizes judgment. But you remain intact, calm, untouched. Another sign is that your intuition is now paired with restraint. You sense things, but you don't overreact. You wait for confirmation. You trust timing. That balance between perception and patience is rare. Many people feel intuitively but act impulsively. Others suppress intuition entirely. You integrate both. Integration is power. You've also become immune to spiritual intimidation. Symbols, threats, nightmares, or fear-based narratives don't shake you anymore. Even when darkness tries to appear dramatic, you see it as inefficient. Loudness doesn't impress you. You recognize posturing when you see it, and because of that, fear no longer has leverage. There is also a shift in how time behaves around you. You don't feel rushed by external pressure. Deadlines don't panic you. You operate on internal pacing. This is important because darkness thrives on urgency. When people rush, they choose poorly. You don't rush. You may also notice that you attract people who are either deeply drawn to you or inexplicably repelled by you. Neutral reactions become rare. This polarity is a sign of energetic clarity. You don't blend, you contrast, and darkness cannot hide in contrast. Another critical sign is that you've stopped needing to explain yourself. You don't over-justify. You don't You let misunderstanding exist without correction. This restraint seals many access points. Demons rely on emotional leakage through explanation, defense, and justification. Silence closes the channel. At some point, you likely realized that fighting darkness directly was unnecessary. You stopped engaging. You stopped proving. You stopped reacting. And in that moment, control shifted. Because darkness feeds on engagement. When you withdrew attention, you starved it. Dark chosen ones who cannot be touched understand something fundamental. Energy flows where attention goes, and your attention is disciplined. You've also developed a tolerance for ambiguity. You don't need immediate answers. You can sit in uncertainty without anxiety. This makes you extremely difficult to destabilize spiritually. Confusion is a primary weapon. You don't collapse under it, you navigate it. This is why demons no longer approach you head-on. They test others around you instead. They attempt to create noise, distraction, emotional spillover, hoping it reaches you indirectly. But even then, you notice patterns quickly and disengage before contamination. Your awareness now functions like a filter. And the moment you realized you didn't need to fight anymore, you became unreachable. The fourth sign emerges when darkness no longer sees you as an opponent, but as a fixed point. Something immovable. Something that does not escalate, does not flinch, does not negotiate. This is the stage where demons stop attempting disruption and instead begin restructuring their roots around you. You are no longer part of the battlefield. You are the terrain. This happens after a very specific internal shift. You stop identifying with struggle. Not because life becomes easy, but because struggle no longer defines you. Pain passes through you without leaving residue. Conflict ends without taking pieces of you with it. And darkness, which relies on accumulation trauma stacking, emotional debt finds nothing to store. You've likely noticed that even when stressful events occur, your recovery time is unnatural. You don't spiral. You don't ruminate endlessly. You integrate the lesson and move forward. This efficiency is not emotional numbness, it's mastery. And mastery terrifies lower vibrational entities. Another sign is that your inner dialogue has changed. It's quieter, more deliberate. You don't attack yourself anymore. You don't rehearse worst-case scenarios. You don't replay insults. Demons often exploit self-talk because it's an open channel. You've closed it. And in doing so, you've sealed one of their primary access points. You may also notice that your boundaries have become effortless. You don't explain them. You don't enforce them aggressively. They simply exist, and people feel them. Darkness cannot cross a boundary that isn't emotionally charged. Calm boundaries are impenetrable. At this stage, you also stop craving intensity. Drama no longer excites you. Emotional extremes feel inefficient. You prefer clarity, order, precision. This is crucial because darkness often masquerades as intensity. You've outgrown that illusion. You've also developed an unusual relationship with solitude. You don't fear it. You don't escape it. You use it. Solitude sharpens you instead of weakening you. And demonic forces understand that someone comfortable alone cannot be easily controlled through social pressure, abandonment, or isolation tactics. Another sign is that you sense when something is beneath you energetically. You don't engage in arguments that lead nowhere. You don't chase people who misunderstand you. You don't descend into environments that feel misaligned. This discernment saves enormous amounts of energy, and darkness starves where energy is conserved. At some point, you realized that reacting was optional. That realization changed everything. Because once reaction becomes a choice instead of a reflex, manipulation collapses. Demons depend on automatic responses. You no longer provide them. You may have noticed that when negativity approaches, it dissolves faster than before. Conflicts resolve themselves. Tension deflates. People back down without confrontation. This is not dominance, it's resonance. Your internal order imposes external order without effort. This is the stage where darkness no longer attempts intimidation. No fear tactics. No dramatic interference. Because it has learned something critical. You do not amplify chaos. You absorb nothing unnecessary. Dark chosen ones at this level often feel a strange sense of neutrality toward darkness. Not attraction, not hatred, understanding, and that understanding removes its mystique. Darkness loses power the moment it is no longer romanticized or feared. You've also stopped asking, why is this happening to me? You now ask, what is this refining in me? That shift alone elevates you beyond most spiritual traps. At this point, demons recognize something unsettling. You are no longer part of their cycle. You are outside the loop. And once you step outside the loop, only one final realization remains. The fifth and final sign is the one most dark chosen. Ones don't realize until it's already active. Darkness no longer tries to enter your life. It tries to observe you from a distance, not to attack, not to influence, but to understand. And that alone should tell you everything. Because demons do not study what they can destroy. They study what they cannot. At this stage, you've become energetically autonomous. Your peace is not dependent on circumstances. Your stability does not collapse when plans fail. Your identity no longer fractures under pressure. You move through life with a quiet authority that doesn't need announcement. And that is precisely why darkness keeps its distance. There was a moment you didn't notice, a silent turning point that didn't come with thunder or warning, yet everything shifted after it. You didn't celebrate it. You didn't even recognize it. But in the unseen realm, something irreversible happened. The pressure that once followed you everywhere suddenly weakened. The heaviness that clung to your days began to thin. The constant resistance, the relentless interference, the unexplained battles that drained your energy without explanation, most of them stopped. Not because the struggle ended, but because you won far more than you realized. You weren't meant to fight everything head-on. That was never the design. The real victory happened through endurance, restraint, awareness, and growth. Each time you chose clarity over panic, self-control over reaction, faith over fear, something lost its grip. Each moment you refused to collapse under pressure removed access points that once allowed opposition to linger. Over time, the numbers shifted. The presence that once crowded your path began to retreat. Not dramatically, quietly, strategically, permanently. What remains now is only a fraction of what once surrounded you. The vast majority of interference could not survive your consistency. Chaos thrives on instability, and you became stable. Manipulation feeds on doubt, and you learned discernment. Fear requires vulnerability, and you transformed it into awareness. One by one, unseen forces were neutralized, not by confrontation, but by your refusal to remain who you once were. This is why life feels different now, even if circumstances haven't fully changed yet. The internal battlefield has been cleared. You no longer wake up under the same weight. Triggers don't hook you the way they used to. Situations that once spiraled now dissolve before gaining momentum. You may not call it victory, but that's exactly what it is. A silent domination through evolution. Most people never reach this stage because it requires surviving long enough to outgrow what was sent to stop them. You did, and that is why the remaining resistance behaves differently. It no longer overwhelms, it observes. It no longer attacks, recklessly attests, cautiously. It no longer surrounds, it approaches one at a time. Because mass tactics failed, and what failed cannot be repeated. Your presence now carries a different signal. The environment responds faster. Situations rearrange themselves around you. What once drained you now avoids you. This isn't coincidence. It's recognition. You've crossed a threshold where most opposition has already been rendered ineffective. The war is no longer external. Confirmation, you didn't escape. You didn't get lucky. You didn't avoid the battle. You outgrew it, and what remains knows it cannot win the way it once tried. The realization doesn't arrive loudly. It settles into you quietly, like a truth your soul already knew, but your mind is only now catching up to. You didn't defeat them through confrontation or force, but through endurance, awareness, and alignment. Most never make it this far. Most are overwhelmed early, distracted, broken down by doubt before they ever understand what they're facing. You kept moving while confusion tried to slow you. You stayed standing while pressure tried to fold you inward. That alone placed you beyond the reach of nearly everything that was sent to stop you. What you survived was not random. Every delay, every emotional drain, every season where nothing made sense was part of a narrowing path. The reason it felt relentless is because the number had already begun to thin. As others gave in to fear, distraction, or self-betrayal, you adapted. You learned to read the environment. You learned when to speak and when silence was protection. You learned how to remain intact even when surrounded by instability. This is how the separation happened without announcement. This is how you crossed the line most never even see. The forces that once pressed from every direction no longer approach the same way, not because they disappeared, but because they can no longer operate freely around you. Your awareness disrupted their access. Your growth closed doors they relied on. Where manipulation once worked, it now fails. Where confusion once took hold, clarity interrupts it immediately. This is not luck. This is earned positioning. When you outgrow a level of opposition, it loses permission to engage you directly. You may notice fewer attacks, but sharper ones when they do appear. That's because quantity has been replaced by strategy. Only the strongest resistance remains, and even that operates cautiously now. It no longer rushes you. It watches. It waits. It probes for old versions of you that no longer exist. The tactics haven't changed, but you have, and that difference is everything. What once drained you now reveals itself faster. What once confused you now feels obvious. Your intuition reacts before your thoughts do. Your body senses misalignment instantly. Your spirit no longer negotiates with what feels wrong. This is the mark of someone who has moved beyond survival into authority. Not dominance over others, but command over self. And nothing destabilizes opposition more than a being who cannot be internally divided. You didn't win by fighting every battle. You won by refusing to lose yourself in them. You chose integrity when shortcuts tempted you. You chose growth when comfort tried to stall you. You chose awareness when numbness felt easier. Each choice removed access points. Each lesson closed another door, until suddenly, without ceremony, the field cleared. Now you move in a quieter space, not empty, but refined. Fewer distractions, fewer unnecessary conflicts, fewer emotional drains. This is not isolation, it's elevation. Only what can meet you at this level remains in your orbit. Everything else fades out naturally, unable to keep pace with the frequency you now hold. This is why things feel different lately. Why chaos doesn't cling the way it used to. Why pressure dissolves faster. Why recovery is quicker. You are no longer where you were when the battle was crowded. You are standing in the aftermath, whether you've named it yet or not. And the most important part is this: what remains ahead is not meant to break you, only to refine you further. You didn't come this far to be taken out quietly. You came this far because you were built to finish what you started. The realization settles quietly at first, then spreads with undeniable weight. What you survived was not random pressure or ordinary struggle. It was a systematic thinning, a narrowing that only a few could pass through. Every phase that tried to exhaust you, confuse you, isolate you, or harden your heart was designed to stop momentum before it formed. Yet here you are, standing beyond what most never cross. Not louder, not aggressive, not seeking validation, just intact. That alone explains everything. You didn't defeat opposition by force. You outlasted it by remaining aligned while it consumed itself. Most forces don't lose because they are confronted. They lose because they cannot endure coherence. What remains now is different energy. The chaos that once felt relentless no longer arrives in waves. It hesitates. It approaches indirectly. It tests the edges instead of attacking the center, because the center is no longer vulnerable. You may notice that challenges still appear, but they lack depth. They don't reach your core. They skim the surface, lose shape, and dissolve before they can anchor. This is what happens when endurance replaces fear. The system that once fed on reaction can no longer feed at all. There is also a subtle shift in how you perceive yourself. You are no longer trying to prove strength, explain resilience, or justify your path. That phase ended without ceremony. What replaced it is quiet certainty. You don't announce it. You don't debate it. You simply move from a place of knowing that cannot be shaken because it was forged under pressure. The weight you carry now is not burden, it is gravity. and gravity does not chase. It attracts and repels effortlessly. You may feel moments of stillness that would once have felt empty, but now feel full. Silence no longer triggers doubt. Solitude no longer feels like exile. These were once weapons used against you, but they failed. What was meant to weaken you became the environment where clarity formed. The noise fell away, the illusions burned off, and what remained was something stable enough to stand on its own. This is why what opposes you cannot regain access. There is nothing loose to grab onto. Even your memory of past battles feels distant, as if they happened to someone else. That's not detachment, it's integration. The lessons are embedded now, no longer emotional, no longer raw. They exist as instinct, discernment, timing. You don't relive what you survived because you no longer live at that frequency. What once demanded attention now receives none. And without attention, opposition loses relevance. Understand this clearly. What you defeated was not an enemy outside of you, but the version of pressure that could still move you off center. That version no longer exists. The remaining challenges you face are not meant to stop you. They are meant to calibrate you. They refine rather than threaten. They adjust rather than attack. This is how you know the turning point has already happened. From here, forward motion becomes inevitable. Not rushed, not forced, not dramatic inevitable. The resistance that once slowed you has been reduced to background noise. The path ahead doesn't open because you demand it. It opens because there is nothing left blocking alignment. You don't need to fight anymore. What needed to fall away already did. And that is why the hardest part is over. The realization arrives quietly, not as celebration but as certainty. You begin to sense that most of what once drained you no longer has access. The pressure that used to feel constant has thinned, as if the air itself has changed density. What remains no longer swarms or overwhelms. It tests cautiously, probing from the edges rather than charging headlong. This is how you know you've crossed a threshold. Victory at this level doesn't look like noise or applause. It feels like space returning to your life, like clarity settling into your thoughts, like strength no longer needing to announce itself to be real. You didn't defeat opposition by fighting endlessly. You outgrew it. The majority of what once latched onto your fears, doubts, and exhaustion cannot follow you into this state. They required confusion to survive, required emotional leakage, required self-betrayal. When you stopped abandoning yourself, their numbers collapsed. When you learned discernment, they lost camouflage. When you chose alignment over reaction, their access points closed one by one. This is not an accident. It is a consequence of evolution. Notice how your inner dialogue has shifted. The old internal arguments, the constant questioning of your worth. The reflex to expect sabotage, these patterns no longer dominate. They may appear briefly, but they cannot stay. You observe them without merging, and that distance is everything. What cannot merge with you cannot control you. What cannot control you cannot remain. This is why so much interference has already fallen away without dramatic confrontation. It's simply starved. Your energy now operates like a filter. What is misaligned cannot linger. What is manipulative reveals itself quickly. What is draining feels obvious rather than confusing. This clarity wasn't given to you. It was earned through endurance, through nights when you felt isolated, through seasons when nothing made sense, through moments when you chose integrity even when no one was watching. Each choice refined your frequency. And refinement is lethal to parasitic forces. You may wonder why a small percentage still remains, why traces of resistance still appear, why challenges still arise. This is not failure, it is function. Residual opposition exists only to confirm your mastery. At this level, it no longer seeks to destroy you, it seeks information. It tests boundaries that no longer move, and each failed attempt reinforces what is already true. You are no longer accessible in the ways you once were. Your presence alone now alters dynamics. Rooms feel different when you enter. Conversations shift tone. Tension dissolves or exposes itself immediately. This isn't because you dominate. It's because you stabilize. Stability is threatening to chaos. Order disrupts deception. Coherence collapses fragmentation. You don't need to confront anything for it to feel exposed. Your consistency does the work for you. There is also a deeper change happening internally. You no longer crave validation from sources that once mattered. Approval has lost its leverage. Fear has lost its urgency. Even success feels different, not like proof, but like alignment catching up with you. This is the psychological signature of having cleared most internal adversaries. External pressure always mirrors internal fracture. When the fracture heals, the pressure weakens. Pay attention to how rest now restores you faster. How silence feels nourishing rather than lonely. How solitude no longer feels like punishment, but preparation. These are signs of sovereignty returning to the nervous system. You are no longer operating in survival mode. You are operating in command mode. And command does not rush. It observes, calibrates, and moves only when necessary. The remaining resistance you encounter is subtle, almost procedural. It comes as distraction rather than attack, as delay rather than destruction. It tries to pull your attention sideways rather than knock you down. This is because direct confrontation no longer works. What remains has learned that only misdirection has any chance of slowing you. And even that window is closing. Your intuition has sharpened to the point where warning signals appear before danger does. You sense when something is off without needing evidence. You feel when a path is wrong before it costs you. This isn't paranoia, it's precision. Discernment is one of the clearest signs that most internal and external threats have already been neutralized. You are no longer learning through damage. You are learning through awareness. There was a time when you felt constantly targeted, as if life itself was pushing against you. That phase was not punishment. It was training. Pressure forged perception. Resistance refined strength. Loss clarified values. And now, standing where you are, you can see that the intensity had a purpose, to push you beyond the reach of what could only survive at lower levels of consciousness. You don't need to revisit that terrain anymore. Nostalgia for struggle is a trap. You are not meant to prove yourself through pain again. You are meant to move forward with authority that feels almost quiet in its confidence. Power no longer needs spectacle. It needs alignment. What you've defeated is not just external negativity, but internal agreements with it. Old narratives, old fears, old loyalties to suffering, those are gone now. And without them, most opposition has nothing to attach to. This is why the percentage is so high. This is why the battlefield feels empty compared to before. This is why peace is starting to feel normal rather than suspicious. From here, your task is not to fight, but to maintain coherence, to protect your clarity, to choose environments that respect your frequency, to move deliberately rather than defensively. The last remnants of resistance dissolve when they are denied emotional fuel. Attention is currency. Where you place it determines what survives. You have already done the hardest part. You stayed conscious when it would have been easier to numb. You stayed honest when it would have been easier to perform. You stayed aligned when it would have been easier to conform. That is why most of what once opposed you no longer exists in your world, and what remains knows it is on borrowed time. What remains after such a long, unseen struggle is not exhaustion, but a deep, unfamiliar stillness. The kind that only arrives when something relentless has finally loosened its grip. You may not have noticed the moment the balance shifted, because victory of this scale rarely announces itself with noise. It arrives quietly, like pressure lifting from the chest after years of carrying weight you forgot you were holding. The battles you survived were not all dramatic. Many were subtle, internal, slow, fought in silence while the world kept moving as if nothing unusual was happening. Yet every time you chose clarity over confusion, restraint over reaction, integrity over impulse, something ancient inside you strengthened while something predatory weakened. The reason most of the opposition dissolved without you seeing it is because endurance starves what feeds on instability. Forces that rely on fear, distraction, and emotional fracture cannot survive proximity to coherence. You did not defeat them by chasing them away. You defeated them by refusing to become fragmented. Every season where you stayed upright despite disappointment, every moment where you held your values while being misunderstood, every time you walked forward without external validation, you reduced their access. They did not disappear suddenly. They lost relevance, and irrelevance is the one condition they cannot adapt to. You might notice now that certain cycles simply no longer repeat. Old triggers fail to ignite. Familiar temptations feel hollow. Situations that once drained you no longer hold the same charge. This is not because the world softened, but because your inner structure matured. You learned to observe without absorbing, to feel without being consumed, to engage without surrendering yourself. That mastery quietly closed doors that had been open for years. What once entered freely now finds no entry point, no resonance, no agreement to latch onto. The remaining resistance you encounter is faint, disorganized, almost confused. It lacks coordination because the system it depended on collapsed. When you no longer respond predictably, manipulation loses its rhythm. When you no longer doubt your worth, intimidation loses its leverage. When you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding, distortion runs out of fuel. This is how dominance dissolves, not through confrontation, but through withdrawal of consent. What replaced the chaos is not perfection, but alignment. You are still human. You still feel. You still question. But beneath all of that is a steadiness that does not waver when conditions change. You trust your internal compass more than external noise. You sense when to move and when to wait. You recognize false urgency. You feel the difference between intuition and impulse. That discernment is not dramatic, but it is decisive. It quietly governs outcomes before they fully form. The world now responds to you differently, even if no one can explain why. Conversations shift tone around you. Conflicts lose intensity. People either feel at ease in your presence or subtly uncomfortable, depending on their alignment. You are no longer neutral territory. You carry definition, and definition reorganizes environments. It draws what is compatible and repels what is not, without effort or announcement. This stage is not about vigilance anymore. It is about stewardship. You are learning how to maintain clarity without rigidity, strength without hardness, confidence without arrogance. The challenge now is not survival, but sustainability. To remain open without becoming porous. To remain compassionate without becoming to remain powerful without needing to prove it. These are the refinements that follow real victory. You may still encounter resistance, but it will feel different. Less personal, less heavy, more like echoes than attacks. Remnants of an old pattern brushing against a new reality. They pass quickly because they have nowhere to anchor. You no longer internalize what does not belong to you. You no longer wrestle with shadows that thrive on attention. You recognize when something is not yours to carry, and you let it fall away. This is why the majority of the struggle is already behind you. Not because everything is easy now, but because you are no longer fragmented. You are integrated. Your thoughts, values, and actions align more often than not. And alignment is hostile territory for anything built on division. From here forward, your role is quieter but deeper. You become an example rather than a target, a stabilizing presence rather than a reactive one. Others may not know why they feel grounded around you, or why their masks slip, or why their intentions clarify in your presence. But it happens, not because you impose anything, but because coherence invites honesty. What you defeated was not an enemy outside of you. It was fragmentation within. And by restoring wholeness, you rendered most opposition obsolete. The final remnants dissolve on their own, unable to survive without the conditions that once sustained them. This is not an ending. It is a transition into a phase where your energy is conserved rather than consumed, where your focus sharpens instead of scatters, where your life begins to feel guided rather than resisted. You move forward not as someone who escaped something, but as someone who outgrew it. And that is the kind of victory that does not need to be announced, because it is evident in how you walk, how you choose, how you remain steady while everything else rushes. What remains after such a long, unseen struggle is not exhaustion, but a deep, unfamiliar stillness. The kind that only arrives when something relentless has finally loosened its grip. You may not have noticed the moment the balance shifted, because victory of this scale rarely announces itself with noise. It arrives quietly, like pressure lifting from the chest after years of carrying weight you forgot you were holding. The battles you survived were not all dramatic. Many were subtle, internal, slow, fought in silence while the world kept moving as if nothing unusual was happening. Yet every time you chose clarity over confusion, restraint over reaction, integrity over impulse, something ancient inside you strengthened while something predatory weakened. The reason most of the opposition dissolved without you seeing it is because endurance starves what feeds on instability. Forces that rely on fear, distraction, and emotional fracture cannot survive proximity to coherence. You did not defeat them by chasing them away. You defeated them by refusing to become fragmented. Every season where you stayed upright despite disappointment, every moment where you held your values while being misunderstood, every time you walked forward without external validation, you reduced their access. They did not disappear suddenly. They lost relevance, and irrelevance is the one condition they cannot adapt to. You might notice now that certain cycles simply no longer repeat. Old triggers fail to ignite. Familiar temptations feel hollow. Situations that once drained you will no longer hold the same charge. This is not because the world softened, but because your inner structure matured. You learned to observe without absorbing, to feel without being consumed, to engage without surrendering yourself. That mastery quietly closed doors that had been open for years. What once entered freely now finds no entry point, no resonance, no agreement to latch onto. The remaining resistance you encounter is faint, disorganized, almost confused. It lacks coordination because the system it depended on collapsed. When you no longer respond predictably, manipulation loses its rhythm. When you no longer doubt your worth, intimidation loses its leverage. When you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding, distortion runs out of fuel. This is how dominance dissolves, not through confrontation, but through withdrawal of consent. What replaced the chaos is not perfection, but alignment. You are still human. You still feel. You still question. But beneath all of that is a steadiness that does not waver when conditions change. You trust your internal compass more than external noise. You sense when to move and when to wait. You recognize false urgency. You feel the difference between intuition and impulse. That discernment is not dramatic, but it is decisive. It quietly governs outcomes before they fully form. The world now responds to you differently, even if no one can explain why. Conversations shift tone around you. Conflicts lose intensity. People either feel at ease in your presence or subtly uncomfortable, depending on their alignment. You are no longer neutral territory. You carry definition, and definition reorganizes environments. It draws what is compatible and repels what is not, without effort or announcement. This stage is not about vigilance anymore. It is about stewardship. You are learning how to maintain clarity without rigidity, strength without hardness, confidence without arrogance. The challenge now is not survival, but sustainability. To remain open without becoming porous. To remain compassionate without becoming to remain powerful without needing to prove it. These are the refinements that follow real victory. You may still encounter resistance, but it will feel different, less personal, less heavy, more like echoes than attacks, remnants of an old pattern brushing against a new reality. They pass quickly because they have nowhere to anchor. You no longer internalize what does not belong to you. You no longer wrestle with shadows that thrive on attention. You recognize when something is not yours to carry, and you let it fall away. This is why the majority of the struggle is already behind you. Not because everything is easy now, but because you are no longer fragmented. You are integrated. Your thoughts, values, and actions align more often than not. And alignment is hostile territory for anything built on division. From here forward, your role is quieter but deeper. You become an example rather than a target, a stabilizing presence rather than a reactive one. Others may not know why they feel grounded around you, or why their masks slip, or why their intentions clarify in your presence. But it happens, not because you impose anything, but because coherence invites honesty. What you defeated was not an enemy outside of you. It was fragmentation within. And by restoring wholeness, you rendered most opposition obsolete. The final remnants dissolve on their own, unable to survive without the conditions that once sustained them. This is not an ending. It is a transition into a phase where your energy is conserved rather than consumed, where your focus sharpens instead of scatters, where your life begins to feel guided rather than resisted. You move forward not as someone who escaped something, but as someone who outgrew it, and that is the kind of victory that does not need to be, announced because it is evident in how you walk, how you choose, how you remain steady while everything else rushes. If this message reached you, it wasn't random. It found you because you're still standing when most gave up, because you endured pressure that would have erased others, because something within you refused to shut down even when everything tried to break you. This channel is not entertainment, it is alignment. And if you're here, it's because your journey is still unfolding. Subscribe now, not out of curiosity, but out of recognition. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's meant to reach you at the exact moment you need it. Like this message to seal the frequency, share it to awaken others who are still questioning their strength, and comment to anchor your presence here. You didn't survive this far by accident. Stay connected. Stay aware. What's ahead requires those who are prepared, and you are one of them.